Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
Mayor Randy Taylor has once again stirred up controversy. This time, he's proposed looking at doing away with the Rainbow Crosswalk in Salisbury. You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. The action by the mayor to consider removing it follows his decision not to allow the flying of the pride flag in front of the government building in downtown Salisbury. The mayor said that public art should avoid singular political issues and be reflective of the city's history. The Rainbow Crosswalk has been maintained by the Salisbury branch of PFLAG, and its executive director, Mark Delancey, notes that the announcement came as a surprise and said that this was about more than just a crosswalk. It was also about LGBTQ plus rights. It also produced a significant turnout at this week's council meeting. And in our studio this afternoon is City Council member Michelle Gregory, who delivered the proclamation, I believe, at the Pride Parade and Festival. So welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, well, first of all, was this a surprise to you?
No, it was not. This was something I often heard on the campaign trail. Then, just Randy speak of. I had heard him mention this before. He talked about it frequently. And so I was not surprised to see that this was something that was going to be a target of his attention.
So I wanted to parse some of his words here, just to kind of get your feedback here. Mm-hmm. So first of all, he says that he's a fan of public art. But his view is that it should be, his first word is inclusive. And then he's saying he's trying to be inclusive.
I would vehemently disagree. For me, inclusivity means including all. And just because one is being highlighted in one spot, one group, does not mean that others are being excluded. We have to remember that this comes after decades of discrimination, government-sanctioned discrimination and harassment and targeting that has happened to the LGBTQ community. And as such, because that was government-sanctioned and performed, I think that is something that we have a responsibility to strongly affirm the support for our communities, all of them.
So one of the things I get is that I guess there are lots of different communities. Some communities may disagree with some of the things that the LGBTQ plus community wants, and there's this division between the two. Mm-hmm. Is there a straddling here going on, you think, from the mayor, or?
Well, I think that there has been, I think he's been very clear into what his intentions are and what his goals are. I think that there have been compromises offered. I think that the council is willing to consider, opening up other crosswalks for other organizations. Just as a side note, kind of off topic, sort of, but I believe that they would be hard pressed to find an organization that would be willing to paint over that would be appropriate for a crosswalk. So, I don't think there's been a lot of forethought. I have had, over the course of this discussion, many organizations reach out to me personally, and I'm sure the other council members have as well, to ask if they could. And we have to remember that this particular crosswalk was initially put out as a request for proposals where anybody could have signed up to do this. And PFLAG was one of only 2 organizations that responded to this. So, and they have diligently maintained that crosswalk and expanded on it. So it's something that, we asked them to come in. We asked the community at large to come in, and PFLAG stepped up. And I think that we should start to expand. A suggestion was made about having something. I've made suggestions before about having some sort of commemorative item downtown for Bull, the former beat cop who is very beloved in the community, who we sadly lost a few years ago. I would love to see something commemorating him downtown, and a crosswalk would be a wonderful thing considering he walked those streets. So, that was shot down by the mayor. He adamantly rejected it at the meeting that was held by the Arts Committee. So,
to honor this officer?
Yes, to honor this officer. He rejected that, and I in turn reject the idea that any kind of cultural landmark like those crosswalks should be confined to one corner of our city. I think that we should expand and grow it. I think that it would only add to the fabric of our community. And that concept has been rejected by the mayor.
Yeah, and by the way, now you indicated since all this has occurred or up and running to this occurring, other people have been interested in having other sidewalks,
Yes.
as opposed to right, as
Yeah.
opposed to dealing with them. Right.
And as opposed to covering that one up, they said, well, we would just like to have our own
Okay.
somewhere else. For instance, I just worked with our field ops department to create, most folks know that my oldest is disabled. He's a wheelchair user. And I have frequently pointed out the lack of curb cuts downtown. Downtown is my district. And I have frequently pointed this out, curb cuts everywhere, but specifically downtown, and specifically where a ramp lets out from the parking garage that forces wheelchair users to cross in front of the entrance, thereby being put in danger because they are at wheelchair height. So we've put in a new crosswalk there with a new curb cut. It's not totally finished yet. It still needs to be leveled out, but that's another crosswalk. That would be fantastic for some sort of, cultural landmark to be put in there, maybe by a disability community. So I think that there's a lot of potential, and I hate to see us pigeonhole ourselves and keep ourselves into one tiny little corner, just to make a point.
The other phrase he has that hopefully it reflects our history. What does that mean? To you, what does that mean?
To me, it means repainting the Rainbow Crosswalk. I mean, that is history. To me, it is a cultural landmark because it is the first Rainbow Crosswalk in the state. It is the first Rainbow Crosswalk. It is the first trans flag crosswalk. It is the first progressive flag crosswalk, which, may I just add, I helped do the math on that particular flag. And please don't pay attention if the triangles aren't exactly equal width. But, it's one of those things that I think calling it not historic or saying or implying that it's not historic or something that that deserves to be kept in place is saddening to me. It disappoints me.
Well, in terms of history, I mean, obviously this reflects being one who watches the U.S. Supreme Court. We've had Clarence Thomas talk about history and so on. Is he really saying that there's a contrast between, say, the Black Lives Matter, for instance, as opposed to, say, one that honors, say, for instance, Harriet Tubman? I mean, is that
right?
I mean, what is history? Where
history is perspective. I mean, what feels like not history to one person may not necessarily be agreed upon by everybody else. And I don't think there's many in the LGBTQ community who would not who would not believe that celebrating that community is not historic. I mean, I just, to me, as an organization, PFLAG has done an amazing amount of work in the community, and I have always been in awe of the strength and resiliency of that community and what they have gone through and overcome. And I really am disappointed isn't a strong enough word. I'm not sure what is, but it is disappointing to think that our mayor does not believe that those struggles for liberation and equality are not historic in some way.
The other phrase that he uses is he wants to avoid singular political issues, or I guess groups that are associated with singular political issues. I suppose that perhaps it's gay marriage or gays in the military.
Right.
Those are the old ones anyway. What about that? I mean, what does he mean by that? I mean, is there any group that isn't connected to it?
I truly wonder what his definition of political is if it is not straight, white, and male, because women's issues may be considered political. Disability issues may be considered political. Just because we have had to take political means to find equality for these groups does not make them themselves political any more than me having red hair being political. This is something that is ingrained in who they are as an identity. It is something that they live with every day, and I have yet to meet someone's identity that is political.
The other phrase he talks about, I guess it was at the meeting, talked about fairness and he talked about staying neutral. And after he used this phrase the same time with the pride flag as well, he said
Correct.
neutrality. What does that mean? And I guess and one of the things he said, he says he does not understand how being neutral means being exclusive.
I I struggle with the word neutrality because to me neutrality only serves the paradigm of the time. Neutrality, there were people in the 1940s who wanted to remain neutral, but was that the right position to take? Absolutely not. It was not. So I struggle with that word neutrality because neutrality usually only favors one side in reality, and it's not the ones who have been targeted for hate, harassment, and subjugation.
Now, in terms of what he's talking about, obviously he's talking about the government being
Mm-hmm.
neutral,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to say, sort of in general, we can be neutral, not neutral. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and it seems to me, particularly under Day's administration, certainly with the Pride Festival, and now, of
Mm-hmm.
course, with the sidewalk, that this was that neutrality just didn't seem to fit the times. I mean,
Well, I struggled again. I really struggle with the word neutrality because is it really neutral? Um, you know, in true neutrality would be allowing us to open it up to other organizations for other crosswalks, letting other people expand the work that has already been done rather than paint over something as as important to that particular community. I think that there's something to be said for, like I said, we would love to see something for Bull downtown. We would love to see something for Why Comico Goes Purple. I mean, there are so many possible ways we can add. That is true neutrality, if you ask me. Neutrality would be allowing people to come out and support communities that traditionally do not get that kind of visibility.
so, and one of the people who spoke at the meeting asked, "Where does it end? Is Black Lives Matter mural next?
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that that could be next?" I mean,
I do believe that this. If we backtrack on this, it opens a floodgate to any other kind of cultural landmark that we have. And I am incredibly concerned that there is the potential for that. I hope that the mayor will realize that that is going in the wrong direction for our city.
now he's also pledged to work with the Arts Committee to
Mm-hmm.
find a reasonable solution, as he
Mm-hmm.
calls it. Are you confident that that will take place and to your satisfaction? Is it?
I am not entirely sure that he is willing to negotiate in any way in any kind of good faith. Thus far, he has not shown any willingness. They even at their meeting last week, where this kicked off, they made alternative suggestions. They tried to have a discussion, and he was just unwilling to budge on it. And it seems he just seems to be digging in more and more and more, which is not the direction you would hope a mayor would go. We would hope that the mayor would listen to their constituency, listen to the advisors who know what they're talking about, listen to the community, listen to the other elected officials that serve with him. I think that is the most frustrating thing for myself personally, is that he is just not listening to people.
So, does he have the power to go ahead and do this by himself, or does the council have the power to override him, or what are the mechanics here? Have you
The
guys thought about
mechanics
that?
are he has very little wiggle room here. Let me put it that way. I am confident that the council can figure something out before anything happens. I believe we might be discussing it Monday. I'm not exactly sure, but I've been in contact with the council president. We have discussed this. As the liaison for the arts committee, I have advocated their position to the council, and I don't really think he has any kind of political capital to get this done amongst the council, and I don't think he can do it without us, truly, unless he wants to take personal responsibility and make the decision and make the call and direct staff to go ahead and paint over it. If he were to do that, it's squarely on his shoulders. It is without the support of the council. It is without the support of the community. And I don't think he's ready to take responsibility for that.
Would that open the door to some kind of legal action?
I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
I'm not a member of PFLAG, unfortunately,
Right.
other than just being, a proud family member of queer people. And, I lost one of my oldest, dearest friends who was queer several years ago. I really, I don't think so.
Yeah, and what sense, by the way, do you get about the council? You've obviously, council members have chatted with each other. Where are they on all of this?
They vary from ambivalent to hard no. I do believe we have a majority that would be a hard no for this. I don't think he has any ability to convince those of us otherwise. I just don't see him having any kind of wiggle room here.
The other thing that strikes me is that looking at the council and his administration, there seems to be a lot of tension between the mayor and the council over downtown and amongst other issues.
Correct.
How does that impact how the council views this issue and obviously others?
I think it's a cumulative issue. I think that cumulatively we have had situations where he has been entrenched in his own opinions and not listened to the advice of council to guide him in a different direction or try to find compromise. There's been a level of disrespect from the mayor during council meetings, and those who have attended have witnessed it. There are those who think that we are picking on the mayor. We are not. We have tried in good faith to operate with him at every given turn. Council President Doughty has been incredibly patient with him in many cases. I have been increasingly patient with him, but frankly, I'm also not easily moved to many of his ideas. He and I are very politically opposed.
Is it just simply that he comes from a much different political tradition or cultural tradition?
I think that we have very different ideas on what's best for the city. And frankly, I would remind him that only 35% of the population thought so, or agreed with him. I think that the overwhelming majority of the city, of the overwhelming majority of our population, do not agree with his ideas. And I think he would do well to listen to the council who, frankly, based on the percentages of the last election, overwhelmingly do agree with the majority of the city.
Do you see this as part of, say, a social agenda?
Absolutely. I think that he came into this with a social agenda, I believe. And I think all of us do in some regards. I did. I have my own social agenda. But my agenda is openness and transparency and being a support for everybody in the community. And I just don't see that coming from the mayor's office right now.
So in terms of this city, it's come a long way in terms particularly the LGBTQ plus.
Absolutely.
Obviously with the sidewalk, the Pride Festival, although I must admit that going to the last one seemed a bit dressed down. It was not quite as exuberant, I think, as when, say, for instance, Mayor Jack Heath was there.
I think maybe the 100-degree temperature out there helped with that. I know I was exhausted by the time I got to read the proclamation. It was. I needed a full day to recover from that. And I don't know how the Queens did. It was a rough go.
But yeah, I mean, it did seem as if, I mean, aside from myself, I mean, there wasn't the city presence, I think, that I saw in the first two of them.
I agree. And I think I did, council president and vice president were there in attendance. But I know that they were not taking part in the parade like I did or anything like that. But I think that they had other obligations at the time there was just a scheduling conflict for them both. I do know that the council supports the community and PFLAG and what they are doing, and we support our constituents. I think that it is tough for folks to celebrate while feeling under attack. But I think sometimes it does good for the community to be able to get together and be together and show camaraderie. It was an amazing turnout, whether it was fully supported by the city or not. The community itself supports itself, and that's amazing to watch. It was just a huge turnout. It was packed downtown. It's gotten bigger every year, and I'm always amazed, and I imagine it'll be twice as big next year.
So as you look over the recent history of Salisbury, you've been around, you've been a politician. What kind of change do you think you've seen taking place in terms of the culture of the city? I mean, obviously, there has been much more openness, for instance, the LGBTQ plus community, but there does seem to be changes going on. But I don't know how deep that goes in terms of the residents at large.
Right. Well, I think that there's a couple of levels there. I think superficially, and this is, let's be clear. I mean, this issue, the fact that the mayor is spending so much time and energy on this issue, the fact that I've had to do so many interviews on this issue when housing is outrageous, and we put together, a housing action committee that I have had the pleasure of serving on, and trying to find solutions as council members. It's disheartening to see someone like the mayor focus so single-mindedly almost on this one issue when there are much bigger problems out there. There are inequality issues out there, income inequality. There are issues with people not having health care. I mean, we live in a healthcare desert. We have a hospital in our community, the only trauma center on the Eastern Shore, which up until recently was the number one hospital in the state for suing patients for the smallest amounts. I helped work on legislation at the state level. That's something else. I don't believe the mayor ever once went up to Annapolis during session this year, and that's disappointing. I think that we need people who are able to work with Annapolis, to work at the state and federal levels. And here we are talking about a crosswalk when there are much more important things to talk about.
Do you think that coming into being mayor, that he had a real idea about what the job was about?
I don't think he had the foggiest. It has been very clear that he doesn't understand the policies and procedures. He doesn't understand that we are the check to his balance. And it is one of those things that I think he thought he could come in and just run it like a business. He came at it as a businessman, and it is far from it. Public service is not for the weak. It is not for the ones who have just fringe ideas. And it really has been highlighted to me that not everybody is suitable for public service in the past 6 months.
So are you optimistic about the future in terms of where this is going? I mean,
I think Salisbury is an incredibly resilient city. I think that we are overwhelmingly a city of good, decent, hardworking people. I think we have some amazing communities in our city. And I think that a small minority temporarily has control of one office in our city government. And that is just temporary. I think that we have a very bright future ahead of us. I think we have a lot of hope ahead of us. And I look forward to what the future brings. I really do. I love this city. I moved here back in 1996 when I met my husband. So I have 3 kids. I've raised 3 kids in Salisbury. I have, enjoyed living here. I've lived here longer than I ever lived anywhere else in my life. And it really is a special place that I love dearly, which is why I chose to run for this seat and ran for re-election, because I love the city so much and I want to see us move forward. And this is just a temporary setback. This is just a temporary pause. I think that we've got a lot of good ahead of us.
So, I mean, since the mid-'90s, what kind of change have you seen? I mean, I've talked to some previous mayors, and it seemed like up until, I guess, Mary Tillman, there was sort of this good old boys kind of network kind of thing.
Correct.
And then you got sort of these sort of reformers who then kind of squabbled amongst themselves, to be polite about it. And then
very much.
Right.
That's very diplomatic of you.
To say nothing least. And then obviously, of course, Jake Day came in and things seemed to settle down. I mean, that's sort of the trajectory that I've
Correct.
been witnessing. I mean, have you seen the same thing? I mean, is this?
I think so. I have. I've watched this city grow from the sidelines for a good portion of my time here in the city. You know, I've only served this city for going on 5 years now, and you know, I've been very blessed to do so. But I've lived here for much longer, and my husband is born and bred. He was born and raised here.
There you go.
So you know, he frequently talks about his childhood home and things like that. Shout out to Edgar Drive, but you know, it really, I think that we have changed a lot for the good, but I think ultimately the heart of the city, the people of the city, have not changed in that fundamentally they're all very good, hardworking people. And I think that we have a lot of potential, and we're going to continue to grow and continue to move forward. And progress means change, but change isn't always a bad thing.
This is in general, a very conservative area.
In general, yes, but Salisbury tends to be a little bit more forward thinking. Being that we are a air quote metro hub, it is one of those things that I think that we can say that with more people in the community, there's always more diversity. More diversity means more openness and willingness to accept new ideas, and that, I think, that is what makes Salisbury special about what it is.
Right along those lines, it occurs to me, there was the fact that their city did issue an apology for the 1931 lynching of Matthew Williams. That seemed to be a step forward, and the one that the mayor
Correct.
ultimately went along with.
I believe it was a step forward. I wasn't happy with it entirely. I think it could have been a little bit more forthright, but ultimately it mattered that we got it done, and I'm glad that we got it done, but I think that we need to have the action behind it. That was my main concern with anything, was that we make sure that we follow our words with deeds, because words without those are just empty. And that's something that I believe very deeply. You know, we need to be working on those kind of issues and making sure that we are going above and beyond to not just apologize for actions in the past, but to make sure they're not going to happen again.
Do you think this city, any maybe the region for that matter, has a difficult time coming to grips with some of its past?
I do. I think, truthfully, I think anybody who has made mistakes, it's sometimes hard to admit you've made a mistake, and especially when you're a governmental entity. I mean, let's face it, government doesn't move quickly, and it's one of those things that I think that you know, it takes time, but when it's ready, it's ready, and I think the city is ready for that sort of thing now.
Do you think the city is ready for change?
I think so. Absolutely.
We've been speaking with Salisbury City Council member Michelle Gregory, who delivered the proclamation at this year's Pride Parade and Festival, talking about the decision by Mayor Randy Taylor to look at whether or not the Rainbow Crosswalk in Salisbury should be removed. And we appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Delmarva Today with Don Rush.